Welcome to another episode of the Independent Living Podcast. I think 6 or 7 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to have this episode with today's guests because they were signed to a major record label, so they wouldn't have been independent living at that time. But I'm excited to have Qveen Herby and her husband Nick on the podcast. Thank you guys for joining me today. Sometimes, for people that aren't familiar with you, can you just brag a bit for a second and just throw some highlights out there so they could be like, oh, that's why I should listen to them. That's why. What are some of the highlights of your career? Throw me some. I know you got over 100 million views on a cover video for Chris Brown. What are some of the other things that you guys have done that you're proud about, so I could keep people watching this interview?
Well, it's really all about me. I've been practicing my shit for a while. I'm really glad everyone's starting to notice. So this is also going to be interesting too, because we just started our own podcast maybe a couple months ago, and it's just us, just talking shit the whole time. So it's going to be interesting with another person to see how the flow is. So if either one of us just is rambling for a long time, let us know.
Nah, it's all good.
Oh yeah, so you go ahead. Let's see. Where are we at?
I met this schmuck at Berklee College of Music in Boston back in the day, and we finished school. It was the recession, and so we started a YouTube channel. Like you said, thank you for the promo. We blew up on YouTube with Busta Rhymes, Chris Brown, Lil Wayne's Look at Me Now. Everybody flew us out for label meetings. We signed with LA Reid because he was like, look, TLC, Usher, Tony Braxton, what else do we need to say here? Because I grew up in Nebraska listening to R&B. He grew up in Maine listening to all types of shit.
All kinds.
He's like a genre whore. But I
was a jazz guy at school, though.
And he was a jazz trombonist at Berklee, which is what do we do with this?
What do I do with that?
And this is 2010. It's 2010 or...
11. Yeah. So we cover the so the kind of the quick backstory of that is she didn't know that she could had the vocal facility to rap. She decided it was something that everybody could do. So when the speed thing happened, she was just practicing. Our friend at the time, who became our manager at the time, sent us Look at Me Now. And he's like, look, I think this is crazy. This is wild. I know you're good at a bunch of random shit. This is this crazy speed verse. If you could pull this off as a cover, who knows, maybe some people check it out, whatever. Or I think he said, well, why don't you sing it? And she was like, I'm not going to sing it. If I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to do it.
And his strategy for us as our manager was post a cover every week and post an original every week on 2 different channels. So we were like, oh shit, that was our really first indie experience was just roughing it out on YouTube.
Consistency. Just
and it
beat
took
the shit out of it.
18 months, or what was it, 38 weeks until we had a viral hit.
Yeah.
So
that propelled us to get all the phone calls. The first person to call me was Q-Tip.
Sheesh.
And Jermaine Dupri.
Yeah. It's I had voicemails.
And that was the Look at Me Now video is what ultimately got people's attention.
So that was
the 38th video cover song that we did.
Right, that was that, and then we do the deal, do all that shit, have a couple big old fashioned radio hits as KARMIN and the pop band did SNL, all this shit, and then realized that wasn't necessarily what we wanted to do, and then completely killed KARMIN. I had to learn how to produce because that was kind of always my role, but not
you didn't
something
have to.
that I had.
You didn't have to.
She
You wanted
me.
to.
No, let's get real. She made me.
He blames me.
She was like, do you want to stay in this relationship? Put some fucking headphones on.
Well, because when you sign with LA Reid, you get put in the studio with the best. You're in with Dr. Luke, whoever the biggest songwriters are. We learned so much. We were like, wait, let's just grab all this knowledge and just see if we can't do it ourselves.
It is a crazy school for that, for sure. It was just a crash course of because we knew music, but we knew nothing about, the business or how it really works, how you go from just was it wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, where do I go to make a hit record? It's then you learn how the sausage is actually made. You know what I mean? And it's oh, Jesus, I was way off.
And to be honest, for us, all those sessions and all those things, it was always the producer and the songwriters just trying to get a hit, because there's so much more pressure on a record label. They're like, if we put $1 million into this single, it better work, you know? So that was, for us, creatively stifling. And really that's like why everybody leaves a label ultimately, is their like creative differences. But L.A. Reid was kind enough to let us out without like owning us forever, or just.
He did. He really did. So then we were like, what do we do? She wasn't even sure if she wanted to do music anymore. And I was like, I don't know. I think there is something here. So like I was saying, we just kind of like started figuring out our shit and figuring out what we wanted to do, and rebranded it as Qveen Herby, because she's also probably one of the best just like branding minds like that I've ever worked with, for sure. And so we
you're looking at my collection of beads. I've started making jewelry recently.
No. Don't get her going on the beads.
I'm crazy. I like everything.
This is a touchy point in our relationship right now.
But you know, I was so inspired by folks like Kanye. Growing up, to me, Gwen Stefani also such a designer. They were they created everything, the whole world, the aesthetic that they lived through their music art was like so important to me visually. So that was another thing on the label. It was hard to do when you have such big budgets and so many big cooks in the kitchen. It was like, well, what if I want to be quirky as fuck?
Right.
So anyway, to summarize, so then we start Qveen Herby, and then just consistency, and then have a couple songs.
Same model as before.
You know, blow the fuck up on TikTok and, you know, all these different, you know, social media apps and all this shit. And now,
I think our biggest song is probably Sugar Daddy, which
Sugar Daddy.
I think over 1 billion imprints, whatever that means now. People making videos, viewing it, streaming it, watching the video.
I definitely want to get to Sugar Daddy. There's a lot of things that you guys touched on that I kind of want to take a step back and just revisit. So, you know, I think the thing that's important at any point, whether it's 2010 or today, is consistency. You guys said it a few different times. How much of your own original music was out before getting signed? Like, how much original music was out?
That's a good question. Not a lot.
I'd say like a dozen songs.
Yeah, and it was incredibly like there was not really an identity to it. It was very bohemian, almost singer-songwriter-ish.
Our setup was a cajon, which is a wooden percussion box that you sit on.
Right.
And an acoustic guitar. Yeah, I was playing guitar. We would play on the streets of Boston like that.
Yeah, that's how we would shed. We'd go like put everything on the T, which is the subway in Boston, and you know, be sweating our balls off in the underground in the middle of July, and then set up on Newberry Street and play and see if we could get people to actually stop and give us their attention in the middle of the street as they're walking by. We figured then that would be good practice. So yeah, it was all consistency. But in the beginning, I think we probably only had, you know, like you're saying, a handful of songs out.
I would say a dozen songs, and we thought that as soon as we signed the record deal, they were going to let us like produce the songs with producers, and they're like, no, we're going to let's bring in like the big dogs and like get the hit. You have to.
Right. Do you think like you can have similar success with doing covers today? Should artists be doing covers?
That is a wonderful conversation. The short answer is it's going to be different for everybody. I think it is still a really good way. It seems like they are coming back a little bit. The way that people consume everything is, I know a lot of people are scared of them because it feels like, well, that's not, my identity as an artist is going to get lost in this with someone else's song. I know what you're saying. However, some of the biggest artists ever, their songs are cover songs. What's Whitney Houston's biggest song?
I Will Always Love You.
Yeah. Who wrote that? Is that her song? That's a Dolly Parton song.
Right.
No idea.
I mean, even it's not right.
Jimi Hendrix. The
Dude,
Beatles. Don't they have a song that's a cover? Huge cover.
They got a bunch of them. And then like Joe Cocker, he covered a Beatles song, which was his biggest song. So I think
we were also in the service industry to an extent, like singing wedding bands and corporate bands. Like we would sing, or I would sing. You were playing trombone and keys.
I had the best gig ever. It was the most expendable job. Like if I couldn't make it, so I was like the horn player and like backup synth, like string keys. Okay. Yeah. So if I couldn't ever make the gig, I was like, hey, you guys need me to like call sub or something? And they're like, nah. Nobody cares.
That's such amazing practice. And like the whole band, my wedding band was like Brian McKnight's band off season. So when they weren't touring with Brian, they were playing weddings in Boston, and I was singing, and there was another guy, and we just, that's how you made a living. So covering,
they were incredible, obviously.
Incredible. Like I got all my chops from these folks. And so it was like, that's covering songs really trains you to feel the vibration of a hit song and how to like portray that to an audience, because connecting with people is all that really matters in this game.
Right. I actually would encourage people to do covers if they, if they're talented and can like flip it their own way, right?
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all about
the. So yeah, I mean, obviously your guys' covers. I mean, you could tell that you're talented, like that you've put in your 10,000 hours, right? With the instrumentation, the vocals. So it wasn't just like me doing a cover, right? Like I would look foolish. But I think people saw kind of the artistry within, even though it was not your song per se. So it works. So let's you touched on this too. When you signed to the label, you guys kind of were forced to do what the label wanted you to do, like bring in the songwriters and things like that. I even read that they didn't want you guys to appear, or didn't want you guys to get married publicly.
Correct.
That was a thing as well, because of why?
I think they mostly were saying it was because it was going to kill the fantasy, right? Is that what they were saying?
I think so. It was, it was, and they were right about something. They said, as soon as you get married, everybody says, when's the babies? Then you have a baby, and they're like, when's the next baby? And we also knew that wasn't the path that we were looking to go. Like, I wasn't looking to be like on Parenting Magazine. But it was kind of shocking, because we were like kind of the darlings, like this couple, like even Rolling Stone was like, this girl and her boyfriend blew up on YouTube. Is like, it's a little easier to keep the fantasy going for the fans. And at the time, also, gay marriage was not legal yet. So we were also kind of like, well, fuck this. We don't need to get married. If like our friends can't get married, like why would we prioritize this? Especially if like old school folks at the label were like, oh, this is going to kill our marketing.
Mm-hmm. It was an interesting thing too, because it was like 2012, 2013, and it was still the industry. Man, we can talk about this for a long time, but it's like completely shedded its skin and like rebirthed itself like maybe 3 times in the last 15, 20 years. Where it completely, like it was CDs, then it was singles, now it's streaming, now, you know what I mean? Now it's social media driving it. Everything is just constantly turning over. So it was a time in the industry then where kind of the old school people were very stuck in their ways, but the way the world was changing, but they still had the power to kind of like imprint that this was how we were going to still do things, still going to operate. Mm-hmm. So it was a very, you know what I mean? It didn't reflect reality necessarily, but they were still in charge. So a lot of interesting things there too that we could feel very, I don't want to use the word dinosaur, but just like they thought they could muscle it through easier like they could in the past. And all of a sudden that wasn't the case anymore,
Right.
And we had a feeling that they were not correct about this, but we were also like so green and so like, we just came from our living room doing cover songs. We're like, yeah, we should do what you say. And that also came down to like the song selection, which songs they said was going to be a hit. And I was like, of course I'll record it. Like I've never even recorded in a professional studio before. And then they're like, oh, we sent it to mastering. We're sending it to radio. I was like, is this like the sound? Are we going to explore, or this is it? Because there's a mad dash to get something out when you have that viral attention.
Right. And to be exactly that, to be fair too, it is when you do have like such intense attention like that too, it is a tricky playing field because you do want to try to capture it.
Yeah.
So you want to get something out and it needs to kind of like land, but at the same time, maybe you want to try to like, because we didn't really have a sound yet.
Yeah. That's why I tell all my indie artist friends, I'm like, hey, take your time.
Well,
really figure out who you are.
Just make shit and release it. Nobody, no A&R, no anybody ever is really going to give you the real on your record like the public will.
Right.
Nobody. There are sugar daddy. For a perfect example for like Qveen Herby's biggest record. We had no idea that was going to be the one. We had like played it for one friend who was like passionately was just like, that's it. That's the one. We were like, I don't know. Sure. We were promoting another one at the time.
Right.
And so then, that's how it works.
And you don't know when either. Like our song Vitamins blew up like 3 years after it came out.
Right.
I think that's the case also for a bunch of major label artists too. Like they don't even know the artist is on their label and the song's going and they're like, shit.
Yeah, I think social media has really given artists a chance to prove that a lot of times labels don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? Because you get to prove it. You get to go direct to the fans and we can prove that this works, because labels back in the day, they'll be, they're very controlling. They'll tell you what your name could be, what you should look like, what you should sound like. And I think, I don't think Lil Nas X would be allowed to have the name Lil Nas X if it was back in the day and he didn't have a chance to just go out and do his own thing.
Yeah.
Right? They would have vetoed.
Yep.
They would have vetoed that.
Yeah. It's a fun conversation because we were at the very tail end of that world. That world is gone. There's a new one. We just got back into conversations with like bigger publishers and labels, and we're like just trying to take account of what's happening over there. It's so different, and it's looking good. It's looking a lot better.
And I think, marriage and relationships can be celebrated now. We can celebrate them on social medias as goals, right? Like it's not something that I think you guys need to hide. I'm not sure if you are familiar with like Toby Nugway and his wife. Fat.
I'm just going to say,
totally.
You saw Busta talking to him?
Yeah. He is an artist. Like sometimes, like I've known a lot of independent artists, and sometimes independent artists get this moment where everybody's looking. It might be a video, it might be something that happened, a song that happened, that everybody's looking. Sometimes independent artists are ready for that moment and they take it and score a touchdown with it. And sometimes they fumble that opportunity and we never hear of those independent artists again. Toby Nugway definitely took the ball and scored a touchdown. Like he was ready for his moment. He had a lot of music. He knew how to capitalize. They know how to build on those wins, and it's been dope. It's been dope to see.
It's been really fun to see. Yeah, we've been watching him for a few years actually, and it's just like consistency. Every Sunday that he drops, you know what I mean? It's just another one. It's all the mono color, and it's like, and then he starts all of a sudden getting like Pharrell in there and CeeLo Green, and all of a sudden it's like okay, shit, this is real all of a sudden.
Right.
And his whole family, and he's still having kids. Like he doesn't give a fuck. He's like, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm not gonna do a show every day because they told me I needed to make money. I'm gonna do what works for me. And that's why I love what Busta was saying to him. I was like, oh damn, this is a shift. He's the new prototype.
Well, and this is a big thing too that was kind of like a big come to Jesus for us in all this too. You're putting your time, you build your craft, you do the things you got to do. You have a big record. Congratulations. A month later, they're like, "What have you done for me lately?"
Right.
Give me another one.
Yeah.
I need a bigger one.
It's like sports. It's like, oh, you had the game-winning touchdown. That was 2 weeks ago, man. That was last year. I don't give a shit. So then it's like, okay, then then you give them another hit. 2 weeks later after that, they're like, cool. I need another one.
Right.
It's never going to end. So at some point you have to start being like, well, and that, by the way, too, because we talk a lot about like just like your mental capacity and your perspective in all of this, because it fucks with you. And that's a reason why a lot of these people end up so fundamentally unhappy, because they're chasing something they're never going to catch. So there is a huge And I think that's like with Toby, there's a big shift with that where he's like, no, actually, I think this is, I've caught it already. It's already here. I'm not going to do the way everybody's going to tell me to do it. I'm going to, maybe not have the most cost-effective tour because I'm going to take my time when I go out or whatever. But this is the way that I want to do it. Right. And that's a big deal. And sometimes it takes a long time for people to try different things to figure out what that is for them.
Yeah. No, so on my last episode, I had Kota The Friend, and he was talking about that as well, because he's not a big fan of touring. He likes to be at home and spending time with his kids and his wife. So are you another person that's not a huge fan of touring? Is that what you're saying, Qveen Herby?
I actually really love to tour, but I have not done like a conscious tour where I go and I don't drink a bottle of Grey Goose every night, where I don't spend 4 hours at the meet and greet. Like I am empathetic and I love to connect with my people, and I wear myself down. Like I've done so many tours where I've gotten sick and had to cancel shows, and I'm like, you know what? I will be touring again, but it's going to be like pretty stringent. Like I'm going to be meditating. I'm going to be sleeping the same hours every night. It's maybe because I'm just getting older and hopefully smarter.
Yeah, no, you really have to. I mean, touring, it can be a beast depending on how you set up your tours. Like when I used to run a label, and we used to, because it's more cost effective to not have that many days off, right? And if we're in the middle of nowhere, like why not do a show if you have the fan base to do the show? So we would probably do shows 5 or 6 days out of the week. And it can get grueling, I understand that. So you just have to, hopefully, I mean, now you guys are in a place where you can figure out, okay, this is how I want to do it. This is what keeps my sanity. This is what keeps the relationship intact. And that's another thing I wanted to see if you guys have some gems on. You guys are married, obviously. Like, how do you guys balance the work and relationship to keep everything healthy?
We did end up getting married after all, later, and just privately in our backyard. So that was cool.
Yeah, you know what, man?
I don't know how many years ago. We just count from when we started dating because it feels like a huge number. Like we're coming up on 18 years.
It'll be 18 years this.
That we've been like together.
We could have had a kid graduating high school. You know what I'm saying?
We could have signed our kid to a label, and we wouldn't have to work at all.
Oh my God, that's perfect.
You missed an opportunity there.
Totally missed it. Where's Kang when you need him? No, you know what? I think there is no look. I would not recommend. I don't think it's for everybody to like
work with the spouse.
Work with your spouse like this. It happens to work for us. I think also finding that balance is a constant, ebb and flow of not being in the balance and being able to just observe that you're not in the balance and then try to come back into it a little bit. We're learning, and we're also always changing as people too. So I think as soon as we finally get an actual balance sometimes, then like everything will change and then we have to reassess.
Yeah. We've turned it into a spiritual practice too, where we're like, okay, we got into astrology. We live in LA, of course, 2 Tauruses, very stubborn bulls in the same house making art.
She's stubborn.
We love nice things. We love good food. We love sex. We love movies. Like we indulge. We are very sensual creatures, the two of us. So we've turned it spiritual in that we've had to become aware. And like we do this thing where we like separate from our egos and like have a conversation with the real us sometimes. Because it's a bit of a mind fuck. But if you can do it, it's kind of people fantasize about this life. We're just saying it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
No, definitely not.
Another question: what do you miss about being signed to a label? What do you miss? Anything?
What's that? Is that crab hands? Because that's definitely not money.
Crabs. We missed the crab.
You missed the crab?
The seafood dinner. We went to Red Lobster so many times on radio promo.
Fucking, I have no notes.
No, I think what I miss is like the chaos and the. Yeah, they do spend a lot of money, like stuff that I would not be willing to put down, like $150,000 on Facebook ads. Not going to do that.
Right.
Nope, going to put a down payment on an apartment or something rather, So I miss like how crazy and wild it was, and I don't think the budgets are there anymore. One of our first music videos was like $200,000, and we got more views on like videos in our living room.
So the Sugar Daddy has surpassed any of the major production KARMIN videos.
Yeah, and the Sugar Daddy video was like a couple $100.
We did it for like $300, and we did that in our loft. There were 3 people involved: me, Amy, and Alex, who is our like producer assistant guy who helps us with everything. And it's got more views in like half the time. So it just goes to show like, you don't need a huge budget to make something that people are going to watch.
But it was fun because for me, as like the design girl, they would bring in like stylists that were legendary, hair and makeup people that were like doing all. I learned so much. It was basically boot camp.
Yeah, and this is a good point too. It's a rare situation. She is able to do so many things really well. She's really good at doing her own makeup. Really, she's creating hairstyles and shit. It's doing her own styling. Sometimes not everybody can do that.
And
you know what I mean?
For my audience too, like I think a lot of artists' audience might not care about those things, but my audience specifically does.
Yeah.
Love. They're all creative.
And these are all considerations that you learn when you have to figure it out yourself. You know what I mean? It's like when you have to renovate a house, you're realizing, oh shit, these are things I got to think about.
Because it was like $500 every time we would get our hair done for something, or another $500 for the makeup, and then the stylist would get like thousands of dollars to pull clothes. I was like, wait. At one point, I was like, can y'all just send me the money? I'll just do it all. Right. I'll run to Nigel and get some supplies. I'll be right back.
So, like, when I listen to your music or watch your videos, there is a high level of quality. So I would imagine that you maybe were concerned about like there hasn't, at least from what I'm looking, there hasn't been any quality drop off from the major record label to being independent. Like, is that something? I mean, and you alluded to like you kind of know how to do a lot of these things yourself. I would imagine that was pretty important to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it still needs to sound like you said, like it needs to be ready.
Right.
It has to compete.
It has to compete, and there was a couple things. We had some good. We were lucky enough. Okay, so our co-producer produces everything with us, Pompano Puff, who's amazing. We met him when we were KARMIN. And he's just a great collaborator. He also himself has had huge cuts. He's had like Nicki cuts, a bunch of Kodak cuts. He grew up with Kodak in Pompano, Florida.
Pompano Beach.
So he introduced us to Stan in the beginning. Stan Green, who is a mutual friend for us, who's an amazing mixer. So we also have met people who are great mix engineers who have helped us to make it translate in a way. I think if you can get engineers, man, if you can find yourself a good engineer, that is a really big leg up, because that is something that I still am like practicing. I'm not an engineer. That's not like my intuitive skill set. Mm-hmm. But if you can have somebody like a mix engineer or another co-producer, somebody who can like, help you with that stuff.
It's intimidating as an independent artist to try to keep the quality up, and how is it affordable, so you start to learn like the things that are expensive that you can kind of do yourself, and then other things you have to outsource.
Yeah.
Right.
And you find your people, and the people that might be charging a label more, like they might have an indie rate. It's always worth asking. Right.
No, for sure. So let's talk about Sugar Daddy. I think I looked on Spotify. It had over 60 million plays on Spotify alone. And you already alluded to the fact that you guys didn't know like that song was going to go. Was there anything special that you did with that track? Like maybe even after you saw it pick up organically? Like what was the plan with Sugar Daddy?
Okay, what was the plan with Sugar Daddy? So this was right kind of as COVID is hitting. Okay, so it was going to drop like a month earlier. COVID's hitting, everybody is freaking out. So we were like, okay, well, if we put music out right now, no one's going to pay attention at all. Everyone's terrified. So we postponed it like a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And we dropped the whole, because it was just part of like the rest of an EP. We do a lot of EPs. So like 5, at the time, it was like 5-song EPs, okay?
And just to share also, because I know this is an independent artist podcast, we decided to work with a distributor, not because everything that we do is on DistroKid. So there's no fee. It's like $30 for a year to host your whole catalog on there, and they pay you every month. But we decided to work with one like indie distributor that's under a major, in hopes that they could get us some more opportunities. And they didn't do what we wanted them to do, but they did connect us with a guy who helped us run some YouTube ads. We put a few $1,000s into some YouTube ads for Sugar Daddy, and I think they placed, somehow they dialed it so that it would play in front of Ariana Grande's new song.
Or it went, some big similar-ish type of artist.
And so we're now currently working on getting our ad game up, because if you can target and put the right amount of money in the right place and get that like ROI, that return of investment, like get the right people who are going to fuck with you to turn into your fan from that, like that was crucial for us.
Yeah, and it wasn't immediate. It took a few months, and I think what happened is, like, especially the gay community found it, and it started like really bubbling there. And we've always, the gay community has always been so influential and supportive, and really kind of the reason we are here in the first place, to be honest, even with KARMIN and now with Qveen Herby. So they started taking it, and then
TikTok
took it. Yeah.
Which this is a time when TikTok was just like reaching its peak of song breakability. So I feel like it was a timing thing. The pandemic, I mean, what are we going to do now? This is never going to happen again. No, not this way.
Yeah. Right. And then we watched it hit all the different regions of the planet. Like it would hit Southeast Asia, and all the remixes would come up, and those would get hundreds of thousands of videos made. And then it went to the Middle East, and there was a big remix that got I think it's got like 20 million hits on YouTube, and it went #1 in Egypt or something like that.
But we can share that distributor, although they didn't do what we hoped that they would do, they connected us to the right things to do. And they don't own the song in perpetuity. They have like a small percentage for a limited amount of time.
For like a three-year thing.
So for a while, that was like the cool thing to do, and we probably won't do it again, but it was helpful.
Nice. So did you have a video right when the song dropped, or did the video come later?
We put the video out right when the song dropped.
Okay. And then you ran ads immediately, but the ultimate impact of those ads didn't really happen until a couple months after, as you guys. So it was like all those ads were running for 2 months, like 2 or 3 months.
I'm not even sure.
Oh, I think it was really short.
I think it was
like a week or two.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like you can burn through thousands of dollars so fast, but we saw like the ROI, or like the clicks and the interest from those people seeing the ad was higher than usual. So they can kind of use those analytics and say, oh, this song could do well if we had support. So then we call the distributor. We're like, hey, it's doing really well. Can you like help us out? Can we like upstream this or do something? They couldn't do it. Then it blew up on TikTok. So it just like.
And another interesting thing too, like back to consistency, we were uploading the year in like a half, probably 18 months prior to this, we were putting out a ton of music super consistently. So probably a project every 3 or 4 months. And so it was really, we were always trying to put some kind of visual out with it too. Build the world, show them the brand, just flex any kind of visual representation of the music for it. And it just built it. And I think that had a lot to do with Sugar Daddy getting the exposure it did too, because eventually it does slowly rev itself up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we had multiple other songs and EPs out. So if somebody did transfer into a fan, they were like, oh, I'm not going to just listen to this one song. Let me dig deeper, and that's going to compound your income as well. It's the brilliance of Money Long too. Money Long was like dropping, and then hours and hours hit, and it was like game over.
Right. How reliant are you guys, or how much does your music get editorial playlist placements?
Well,
not much.
Maybe there's like 3.
Okay.
No,
so
I think KARMIN still, like, they still put us on pop playlists for some old KARMIN songs, but I don't think we have a single editorial playlist.
All the playlisting is what would you call it? Peer-to-peer. It's all like consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, most successful independent artists that I talk to aren't really reliant on any playlist placements. They have a strong community that constantly listens to their music, and that's how they make so much money from streaming. You mentioned that you're like the gay community is really tapped in, and a lot of times I tell artists, because when I was running our label, if you can tap into like authentically tap into a community that already exists, because they already have message boards and chat rooms. They're already connected. So if you can tap into, whether it's the military community, for us, it was the Juggalos. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Juggalos, but the Juggalo, like Tech Nine and Insane Clown Posse, like that world
Yeah.
took a liking to the music. And at the time, like, again, they had, Facebook groups already. They're so connected that they share the music and it spreads like wildfire. So
Totally.
so I tell artists, like, hey, if there's a community that you're authentically a part of, or somebody that like naturally gravitates to your music, like really lean into that, because it can really start spreading fast if your music resonates with that community. And I don't know if that's what happened with you guys in the gay community, but is that something that makes sense to you with your experience, or is that like, I don't know what you're talking about?
So what I love to see is that on the Grammys, Beyonce got up and thanked the queer community for creating the genre of her album that was so profound and so wonderful. And it's definitely, the strength of the queer community has grown, and it's all, like you were saying, they've always been the ones to like send us money for our first website build and book us for the Pride tour concerts. And like it was so, even though neither of us like identify as queer, it's still the community that supports us the most. And we're learning more and more as the years go on, like what does it exactly mean to be queer, and what is this community about? It's so magical. And they've been the biggest community for us by far.
Yeah. No,
So,
they're
dope. So we talked about this before we went live. I want to ask it now before I forget. So can you talk about, let's just say, top 3 revenue streams while you were signed, and then top 3 revenue streams as independent artists?
Okay. Let me think about that. So when we were signed, it was probably the actual signing. Okay? The advance, because we did a huge publishing deal. And
the record deal advance was a lot smaller.
Because usually, for a lot of these people don't know, that's how it was a lot smaller. You're going to so you get the advance, and then all of your streaming money goes to
the label directly.
So you really, and then once you recoup, which you never do, then you get paid out 13%, 12% or whatever. So it's really like if you're signed like that, you're really not going to be making money off of the
music.
Music, really? Now, publishing maybe if you wrote something.
But if they give you a fat advance for the publishing too, they're recouping that too. So that was the initial payment, and then it was, I would say, touring was our most consistent.
Touring, and then also maybe just like brand partnerships.
Yes.
I know, like we were on like some Twizzler bags and shit like that. You know what I mean? Some wild shit. But those were probably
much more like larger chunks of money spread out over time. It was a little stressful, but the touring was good. But touring is expensive as hell. So you're like, I don't know. We'll see what the accountants say after the tour's over. Did we make money or not? Right. College shows were always really lucrative.
College circuit's been around since before Elvis.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that was a great one. So as independent artists now, top 3.
Streaming.
Yeah. My OnlyFans. Say what else? Why does everybody laugh when I say that? No, okay, streaming, and then let's see what else. I mean, probably
streaming, physical music sales. So like merch, physical music is the biggest seller. We sell some hoodies too, but it's not that crazy.
Vinyls
are a great category now, and we have fun because I like to design them.
Yeah, she's literally actually designing, photoshopping all of it. We have like a photo studio where we take all of the pictures and she photoshops everything like herself.
I do my website is a Shopify site, so you can pick beautiful designs and then it's integrated so the fans can just shop right there. You don't have to leave. You can announce things on there and have a shopping cart. Like, it's so easy. And I'm sure when tour comes around, it's going to be super easy.
But yeah, probably those 2. And then
we have publishing's getting cute.
And publishing is getting
takes like 18 months for your publishing to kick. So It's nice. It's actually the delay. So like your streaming money for like the master royalties, those come in every like 3 months late.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months late.
And the publishing takes like a year or a year and a half. So it's kind of nice if you have like a slow season or something, like this one's high and then this one's low, and then and it kind of like helps make it feel more regular.
Nice. Now I was on the website and I saw that you're selling some chewed gum, Qveen Herby chewed gum for $100.
All right, and we're done here. Thanks for the conversation.
We're getting desperate over here, okay?
No, so
it's not desperate. Now we're just playing with people.
Hold on, let me get one. Do you have some over there?
Yeah, I'll go get it.
Fucking get some.
Let me throw it to him.
I need the story behind like even the idea of selling chewed gum. I got to hear the story.
Well, it's sold out, so I've been over here like chewing more gum, but here's what's happening.
Oh wow.
So it just says the Queen's gum, and it's literally I've covered it in like lacquer, so
like
it's
a lacquer
preserved, and then we've got these custom.
Don't chew it. Don't
So
try
you
to chew it.
so you that is your gum. What brand of gum is that? And have you reached out to get a sponsorship?
Yeah.
Double bubble. Actually, I don't know. Probably it just came in a big bit. I bought a shitload.
I don't know what brand it is. That's a good question.
But we had it for the last music video. I was like blowing bubbles in all the shots, and I was like, it would be really, really strange if somebody wanted to actually buy this, because we put it in a ring box in one scene, and I was like, wait, if I was a fan of an artist and they were selling their used gum, that's something I would want on my bookshelf.
Nice.
Right? Like who's your favorite artist? Let's do the test.
Boys to Men.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh my God, can you imagine like a necklace box with like multiple gum?
I'm good on their gum. I'm good on their gum. I don't think I'd be interested, but I love it because it's different. It's on brand. It has a cool story. It's fun, and I'm
That's
sure
the key. That's the key. It's on brand, and we're continuing to discover how crazy we can get.
Yeah, no, it is funny. I mean, like, if we're like, if it's not super bitchy, we don't want it.
We don't want it.
And it's just exploring that and having. I mean, if it doesn't make you laugh or it doesn't bring you some kind of joy, then
This company always like hits me up in the DMs. They're so smart. It's just water.
right.
But it looks like you're getting drunk on the street or something. It's like gothy, and they're telling you like water is dangerous, like it's gonna kill you. They're writing horoscopes now. They're like, you're gonna have your knees cut off by a chainsaw. That's a horoscope they wrote.
I don't want that horoscope.
I love like that kind of branding is so fun.
It works for some people. I am not the target demographic for that. I will drink other water. You also I think have a makeup line. Can we know about that? Like what inspired you and how do you make it? Like how do you come up with your own makeup line?
Absolutely. So the same thing with the gum. I started thinking, well, what is it that my listener, my audience is interested in, right? They love when I change my hair. I have a bunch of different wigs and different colors. Sometimes I'll sell even like outfits from music videos, like memorabilia type shit. And when it came to makeup, I know eventually we're going to explore other categories too. Like it's just so special when you can say like, here it beads. You can say like, okay, this lipstick was on the cover of this album and we only made a run of like a couple hundred or something. And so it's cool when they can actually get it in the mail and like have the lipstick that I am wearing on their favorite album. Yeah,
she's taught me a lot about this too, as far as like trying to really make the whole thing make sense. So like if we're really going to do this, we're learning now she is a designer who also was like really good at music, but like really you're a designer.
I like to world build.
Yeah. So they're like, well, if we're always seeing your face, like what if it was like a custom lipstick that then they could buy that? Or, the bead that they could get that, or the fucking gum, put it in a fucking case and, sell that shit.
And I've learned so much about business and Shopify and like how to like handle fulfillment. Like there's so many, and this goes for any indie artist who's doing their own merch, right? So we don't need to think so limited, like it's just hoodies and t-shirts, right? You can sell anything merch. Like a couple of, I think Amanda Palmer is like she's known for like selling her dirty socks from tour.
Yeah.
Or like her used underwear. Like it goes for like $1,000 or something.
that's why being an independent creator today to me is so fun, because you can try so many different things. And I know you felt restricted at the label. They probably would have shut a lot of that shit down. They probably been like, nope, we're not selling no chewed gum. That's ridiculous.
You want to sell what now? Yeah, exactly.
You know who's a master at this, and one of my idols is Dita Von Teese. Are you familiar with her?
I'm not familiar. I'm gonna have to get familiar.
No judgment. She is a very niche burlesque dancer, artist. And so she's got a million categories, and she does brand collabs, and it's all because she's created this very specific world fantasy where she like jumps in a giant champagne glass. She performed at the Ace Theater for New Year's Eve here downtown, and it was like sold out. Like she kisses napkins and sells them to, like, it's so fantasy. And it just, especially for we say the girls, the gays, and the theys. That's like our crew. That's our community. It's like so fun for us. It's like what I loved as a little girl, I'm now getting to do all of it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that, a lot of independent creators should think of it that way. The world building, what you called it, is essentially, you create this world, and then you create different entry points for people to become a fan. Like some people might become a fan through the makeup. Some people might become a fan through the music. Some people might become a fan through the podcast. But at the end of the day, it's your world, and there's a consistent messaging and story across everything. So
that's the most magical. That's like your own Disneyland. You are the ruler of your own kingdom or queendom. And
like you're saying too, it's more fun.
Yeah,
it just brings you, or at least for us too, it just brings us more joy.
For sure. What does your team look like? Obviously, it's the two of you. Who else would you consider like the team?
Okay.
We got this one.
We got this one right here. This is Luna.
The most important member there, obviously.
Yeah, she's the executive assistant.
Yep.
We got another one, Gary, down here.
We mentioned we have a co-producer who's Pompano Puff. He's amazingly talented, and I have a manager.
Yeah.
Jeff Burns, shout out Jeff Burns. I call him Tunch, and he is with Reynolds Management, who handle Imagine Dragons and The Killers. Like, they have a crazy roster, some Vegas guys. I have my day-to-day, like, assistant. I hate calling him assistant. He's really like my creative collaborator, Alex Hinsky, who helps me execute all my crazy ideas. He helped me with the gum. It's Alex's fault. Dude, I have some songwriters that help me almost on every project, like a song here, a song there. This guy, Charity Croft, who's has an amazing Instagram channel and vertical where I could hear him talk for like hours and hours. He's so smart. Yeah. But he's a brilliant songwriter as well, and artist. Zach Waters, who goes by Pretty Sister, he co-writes a lot of stuff with me, did Sade in the 90s, which is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, but for the most part, it's really just that core
like 5 people.
4 or 5, yeah.
Nice. And I would imagine that the team when you were at the label, there was just how many more people were, just in terms of numbers, like how many more people were involved?
Well, it would change a lot, but they were definitely, you had teams of people. So you had the PR team. Usually you only had one rep that you would talk to from each way. There's still like teams. So you have the PR team, you'd have the radio team, you would have the, what else? You'd have all of
product manager, marketing,
people. It would become pretty head spinning sometimes, and not in sometimes not. Look, we met some incredible people, but just eventually it was very
difficult to get them to communicate.
Yeah,
and I think that's why having a small team is we prefer it, because everybody's talking to each other. Today we were trying to get the Patreon set up with the Discord, which has its own private chat, and the lady from Patreon was talking to Alex, and he was talking to Jeff, and it was like talking to me, and can you see this? And
and I'm playing fetch with Luna. Everybody's got a job.
He's just making beats.
Yeah,
it's pretty easy life. No, it is nice when it's not so spread out, because otherwise you're just spending all day. That's really what traditional managers do, is like try to connect all the dots at the label all day.
Right. No, I think, obviously being independent, just much more nimble, flexible, can just move at a much, much quicker pace. But as independent creators, what do you feel like you need? Like if somebody could say, "Hey, I'm going to give you your number one need right now to help you in your independent journey," like what do you feel like you need, or is it just a matter of continuing to do what you're doing?
I want to be on all the playlists that make sense for Qveen Herby. That would be game changing for us. So that's again why we're having some chats with labels, publishers, and writers just to see like what's the temperature now. We've been out the game in our own little corner for so long, having a great time. But it could be great to see like if we were able to access that sort of spider web of reach that obviously those playlists are controlled and owned by labels.
Yeah, no, I mean it's I mean there's so much music coming out these days. I mean you're competing with so much music to get on these playlists. If you get on them, great. But obviously you guys are doing well without playlists. What's also really dope is obviously you know had that viral video in 2011. There's a lot of independent creators that didn't really survive or didn't really adapt to streaming in this new TikTok era, right? Either they don't know how to use TikTok, or they don't know how to create as much content as what's required today. Did you guys feel like it was tough to transition into this new era from, you know, how you guys were having success early 2010s?
Yeah,
It was uncomfortable.
very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because we, you know, as soon as you get set in how you're going to do something, and then something else comes and completely, you know, flips it upside down, you're like, fuck.
It's very
gotta-
humbling and borderline humiliating at times
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
say, oh, I'm going to like just set up my iPhone in the living room and make an ass of myself several times in a row and pick the best one and then try to come up with a caption to make me not sound like an idiot. You know, it's very a humbling process, and I know this is changing again. It's only speeding up, y'all. We got to just, as independent artists, we always got to be on what's the next thing and just keep your message at the forefront of what you do, and you'll be fine.
And get comfortable being uncomfortable. You are going to be all right. It might take time, but be comfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Nah, for sure. You definitely have to step out of your comfort zone in this industry. Couple other questions and then we can wrap it up. I was going through the discography. Not as many collabs as I thought I'd see. Is there a wish list of collaborations or types of artists you're looking to collaborate with if you want to collaborate at all?
Yes, I love collaborating very much, and I started to hit up my favorite artists in the DMs and realized that they probably get a lot of DMs. And if I was able to connect with them, oftentimes it was really difficult because their label would be sort of like a wall. Like they would say, "Oh, well, the label's this," or "My album's coming out, I can't be promoting something else. It's going to conflict with the release schedule." It's never really about fees because that's like I was like willing to pay these people, but it is really challenging. And I feel like as far as indie artists, I've already worked with like all my favorite people. There's not that many indie artists either and you know what, it's probably because they're not as visible as I should probably do more digging.
Definitely.
But the major label artists that would actually affect, you know, would expose me to a larger audience than my own are a bit out of reach as well.
Yeah, I mean, doing anything with a major label is ridiculously tough. I have a project called 1 Week Notice where I fly 6 independent artists out, put them in a house, and have them record an album in a week. And there were a few times that I wanted to reach out to some artists that were signed, and it was just like, okay, we're not doing this. This is ridiculous, because they don't have the flexibility. And we would have to jump through so many hoops just to get the approval to have them be a part of the project. So yeah, it's just out of
It's
the
a real
question.
thing. And look,
It's a real thing.
it's like, and you get like, because I feel like I'm trying to find other examples, especially of females that are independent and doing the numbers that I'm doing, right? So then I'm like, well, at this point, I love like lifting up artists that are just beginning or need a bigger platform, like love doing that. But now we're trying to be a little bit more strategic and work with like Tinashe and SZA and like some of these incredible women that I am talking to them, but it's just really difficult. I mean, shoot, they've got a lot going on, but it's like the label does become a bit of a barrier.
Yeah, I can see, this might be way off, but I could see a really dope collab with like you and like a Snow the Product, because you could really rap, like, and she could really rap. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Snow, but
I'm texting with her, texting with Snow. I'm texting with Kimbra. Oh, love Kimbra. There's so many. Oh, I got JoJo. I'm like, JoJo, what are we doing a song? Like, that would be so incredible.
Yeah.
So Megan Trainor is a friend from my label past who's very supportive.
I'm just a super fan of collaboration, and I don't think it happens enough. I mean, obviously there's collaborations that happen all the time, but I definitely don't think it happens enough, because I feel like there's really no greater promotion than having an artist say, hey, introducing another artist to their fans.
Yes. It's so magical for the audience too. Like, it's the best. You're right.
Especially in hip hop. I mean, that's how it works. You know what I mean? Everybody, they show off there. You're like, hey, this is this new guy I'm fucking with. Like, everybody check him out.
Right. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. The last thing that I would have you say to our audience is just, what would be your tip to aspiring independent creators? What would be like the number one thing, the number one piece of advice that you would give to them?
The number one thing, I mean, there's going to be a lot. I would say it is possible. All right. The rules are changing constantly. We kind of have two rules that we go by. All right. When you boil all of your problems down, don't give up and don't go crazy. So that's kind of where everything comes down. That doesn't mean like quit for the day. You know what I mean? You're fed up. You're running your head. You know, still you need to take care of yourself and all this shit. But you can build an audience. It's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. But fall in love with the process, not the outcome.
There you go. Qveen Herby, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, that's really, in this house, that's like the gospel in this house. I mean, the consistency thing. And then, you know, we have our little podcast episodes do go into more detail on like how to start. I think for me, it's always like the scariest thing, even at this last shift of like TikTok that you were saying, we're so uncomfortable with it. Just doing it is like a huge hurdle for me and people that I know. It's like, just fucking go, just start. Even if it totally flops and totally fails, you're going to learn and you're going to pivot, and it's going to be amazing if you just keep going. Don't give up. Don't go crazy.
Dope. Well, thank you guys once again. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful episode. I'm glad we had this conversation. And that is it. This is episode, actually, I don't know what number this is going to be, so I'm not going to say it, but this is another episode of the Independent Living Podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully you learned a lot. And we're out of here. Peace.